Saturday at 11 a.m., one of the biggest college football rivalries kicks off. The Texas Longhorns face the Oklahoma Sooners in the 115th edition of the Red River rivalry, or Red River Showdown, whatever people call it nowadays. I still call it the Red River rivalry because they all start with R's and it's a rivalry. When you talk about other rivalries, you don't call it a showdown. You don't say, oh, the Michigan-Ohio State showdown. No, you said the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry. I don't know what they call it, but I call it a rivalry, so that's why I call it the Red River rivalry. Going into the game, I'm just going to give some general info. So you got Oklahoma favored by the ESPN matchup predictor 79.7 to 20.3. Tickets are expensive. Oh, man, really expensive. Oklahoma is favored by 11 points currently, 10.5, so 11. And the over-under is 75.5. That's a lot of points for those out there, for those of you out there knowing that. But coming into this game, both teams having a fairly good season. Oklahoma 5-0 on the season. Coming into this game, undefeated for what? The second straight year, I think. I think they lost in 2017 coming into this game. But Texas, obviously, for the second straight year coming into this game with one loss. This year was a better loss than last year's loss. Last year they lost to Maryland. This year they lost to LSU at home. We'll talk about that later on. Texas averaging 41.8 points per game. Oklahoma averaging 53.4 points a game. Man, Jalen Hurts, it doesn't matter who's been at quarterback recently for Oklahoma. They have been able to put up points and put them up easy. Whether it's Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, or Jalen Hurts, they've all been killing it. Something they all have in common, they all transferred to Oklahoma. So Oklahoma loving those transfer quarterbacks. Ironically, the quarterback who transferred away from Oklahoma, Austin Kendall, is not doing too hot. We will also talk about him later on. Oklahoma averaging almost 650 yards per game. Texas averaging just over 484. So pretty solid for both of them. As you would expect, both teams passing yards, that's their big thing. Yards allowed is a little bit different. Texas is allowing 442 yards per game, but they're only allowing 117 rush yards per game, whereas Oklahoma is allowing 346 yards per game, but they are averaging almost 150 yards per game, allowing the other teams. Now, looking at who they played so far, it's very, very different. Texas, their one loss was to LSU, who is currently a top 5 team. They did lose at home, which is not good, but, that's a quality loss, and they have been tested thus far. So I think that is that's going to play a factor into this game. Oklahoma really hasn't played anyone too good. Houston, South Dakota is not even debatable for a challenge. UCLA could make a case for because UCLA did go out and beat Washington State, but how good is Washington State, though? We could debate that. Texas Tech, they absolutely obliterated. And we saw what Texas Tech did to Oklahoma State last week. That gives me a little bit more confidence in Oklahoma. And then obviously they beat Kansas. They struggled in the first half, but were able to put it away in the second half. So Texas, so far they played Louisiana Tech, LSU, Rice, Oklahoma State, and West Virginia. And all those are wins except for LSU, their biggest challenge of the year. As for their conference play, they played one pretty somewhat tough opponent, and then West Virginia was a little closer than it should have been. But let's get into it. So we do have some injuries coming into this game. Texas has a few defensive backs injured. I think Oklahoma has a few offensive linemen injured, but I can't find the Oklahoma injury report. But for the Texas injury report, Colin Johnson is expected to return this week, which is big for their receivers. He has not played since the LSU game, I think. He's been out a while. It says, Tom Herman said, barring any setbacks, we plan on playing him against Oklahoma. For Texas's defensive backs, I think, where is he? Overshawn is to return. I don't know how to pronounce his first name. Jordan Whittington is out. Cade Brewer, tight end, will play. He did not suffer concussion last week, and I didn't even know, but Keontae Ingram was apparently hurt, but he's playing. So there's your Texas injury report. Oklahoma, I think they have a defensive back out for the season, I think, or a corner or something. And then they have a couple offensive linemen hurt, I think. Someone confirm that in the comments if you do know that for a fact. But it's going to be a beautiful day in Dallas, actually. It's going to be like 66 degrees at game time, I think, sunny. Sounds like a fun game to be at. Good weather, good game, neutral site, fun stuff. But going back to the game, I think this could be very similar to last year's game, just from the fact that Texas, obviously, coming into this game as the underdog. They're an improved program since they were from what they were a couple of years ago. Oklahoma, college football playoff talk. Are they going to make it? How far will they go? Are they championship contenders? How good is this team? This is going to be their first test. How do they face up against the second best team in the Big 12? And then obviously Texas, are they back? Are they contenders for the Big 12? Can they dethrone Oklahoma? So we're going to have that debate again, once again. And the fact that I think it could be similar to last year, obviously you got two very high-powered offenses, and then you got two questionable defenses, so that is also going to play a factor in it. But it could be higher scoring than last year. At first I was going out saying, I was like, oh, it's going to be like a 59-55 shootout kind of thing. I think there could be some more defense in this game than last year, but obviously if both offenses play their best, I think it is very possible that we get a high-scoring shootout. Considering you have you have the Heisman favorite right now, Jalen Hurts, and then you have someone who's probably 5th or 6th in the Heisman running right now, Sam Ehlinger. So you do have a couple of pretty solid quarterbacks under the center right now. And then Oklahoma, obviously, they've always had a talented offense. Receivers, they got Lamb. Rambo's having a good year. They've got some talented players, so I expect them to score a lot of points. Texas's defensive plan should be, look, they're going to score points. Like, we're not going to prevent them from scoring points. They're going to score at least 30 points most likely. I think Texas has to force – I think both teams, turnovers are going to be key. Last year we saw that in the October game that turnovers were key. Oklahoma had 2 turnovers during the game. Technically they had 3, but one of them was during the last play. I don't count that. But one was a Kyler Murray interception that turned into a field goal for Texas, and then Kyler Murray fumbled deep in Texas territory, which led to a Texas touchdown. So those 10 points off of turnovers that Texas scored ended up being crucial for the results of the game, and Texas did not have any turnovers that game. Big 12 championship, I think Texas had a couple turnovers. I know Oklahoma had one, but I don't know how many Texas had. I think they had a few, and obviously turnovers were key. And then Oklahoma, obviously, with the late safety in the Big 12 championship, which is that's like basically a turnover for 2 points and getting the ball back. So turnovers are key. So there's so much offense, but the defense is what's going to come down to this game. If you can get some stops, if you can force some turnovers, that's going to be key, because you know your offense can go down and score, but can your defense get a stop every once in a while? That's going to be very key for this game. Oklahoma's rushing, if Jalen Hurts has to throw, I think that's an advantage for Texas, but they cannot let him run. If Jalen Hurts starts running, that's bad. I think he's averaging almost 100 yards a game, so he's been doing very well. And this isn't Kyler Murray. Last year, Kyler Murray, he'd take off and he'd slide or run out of bounds. Kyler Murray doesn't take hits. He does not want to get hurt. He doesn't want to get crushed. He's a small guy, so he doesn't want to get hit. He doesn't want to get hurt. Jalen Hurts is a big guy. He will lower his shoulder and run you over. This is a completely different runner. He's not as fast as Kyler Murray, but he is bigger, and he can run you over, and he can take a hit. He'll break tackles. So that's going to be something different that Texas is going to have to approach from last year. And then Oklahoma, they're obviously seeing the same Sam Ehlinger. You got a guy who can throw the ball, and you also have a guy who can run. Just like Jalen Hurts, you got a big guy. He's not going to run away. He's not super fast, but he will lower his shoulder and try to run you over and try to break tackles. And we saw that last year. He had, 3 rushing touchdowns in this game? So if Oklahoma can prevent Sam Ehlinger from getting some big run plays, or Sam Ehlinger running in the red zone, that's going to be huge for Oklahoma if Oklahoma can force some field goals in the red zone. But as we know, Tom Herman doesn't kick field goals. That's not a shot at Tom Herman. I agree with the call sometimes, but, they're going to have to force field goals sometimes. As for Texas, they want to win. They got to capitalize on opportunities. We saw in the LSU game, they had 2 4th and goals at the 1-yard line, and they failed them both. So they're going to have to capitalize on that against Oklahoma, considering how quickly Oklahoma can score the football. Texas is going to have to take advantage of any opportunity that the Sooners give them, whether it be scoring. If they get a turnover, they're going to have to score a touchdown rather than a field goal. If they force a punt, they're going to have to score. So Texas, they got to take advantage of these opportunities that the opponent gives them. As for Oklahoma, I could say the same thing, obviously, but Oklahoma, they They have one of the best offenses in the country. They have the Heisman favorite. They should not be concerned about offense right now. I think they've got it. They just need to be a little bit concerned about their defense. Their defense has to make crucial stops. If there's a third down, they have to get the stop. If there's a fourth down and Texas goes for it, they got to make the stop. I mean, it sounds pretty general, but it's true. Oklahoma, they've not really had a big test. They haven't played a really good offense like this. As I said, UCLA, they dropped to 66 on Washington State. So I think you could make a case for them that's been somewhat of a test for their defense. But at the same time, UCLA hasn't been too hot outside of that game, out of what I've seen. Texas Tech did play pretty well against Oklahoma State, scoring 45 on Oklahoma State. They looked pretty good in that game. And so that is actually a disadvantage for Texas because Texas made Oklahoma State look pretty good there, barely beating them at home. But Oklahoma State went out and did terrible against Tech. So that you got all these factors playing in. But Jalen Hurts, it's his first Red River rivalry game. This is Sam Ehlinger. Technically, it's his fourth if you count the Big 12 championship. It is his third in the Cotton Bowl. He made some comments. He's like, yeah, I played in the Iron Bowl. And, of course, Oklahoma fans are like, he means he's played in big games. But Texas fans are like, oh, no, that's not what he means. He does not know this game. And I kind of agree with that. This is the thing about the Texas OU game. It is so much different from an Alabama-Auburn, from a Michigan-Ohio State, from any other rivalry like that where you alternate who gets home. This is never a home game. I don't think this has been a home game since the 1920s. It has always been in a neutral site. The Cotton Bowl, Dallas, it's about equal distance from Norman and Austin. So it has always been this kind of location, and it is a completely different animal. Don't get me wrong. I think Jalen Hurts is a good player. I think he could play anywhere, but like any stadium, but it's a different environment. It's completely different. When you're playing for Alabama, you get the home field advantage every other year. You're playing at Auburn every other year for a true road game. This game is different. At the beginning of the game, before the game even starts, if you're a Texas player, you're standing in that tunnel. You're getting cursed out. You're getting spit on. You're getting things thrown at you probably. But the instant you start running out that tunnel, you're going to your side. And everyone's going to be like, yeah, woohoo, our team. But if you're Oklahoma, you sit in that tunnel, you're nice and cozy. You're like, oh, they're being so nice to us. But once you cross that 50, you're going to get yelled at. You're going to get spat on. You're going to get yelled at. So it's split down the middle. Like, it's just the two fan bases. They hate each other. They hate each other's teams. So it depends on what side of the stadium you're on. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be absolutely insane. It'll be a fun game. But back to where we were, Ehlinger has some experience in this game, so I think that is going to be to his advantage. He has played pretty well in these big games. Obviously, last year against Oklahoma, last year against Georgia, he played really well against LSU despite the loss this year. 2 years ago against Oklahoma, his first start in the Texas OU game, he had a pretty solid game as a true freshman. So he has played in these big games. He has played in this Oklahoma game multiple times. He knows how to play this game. He knows how to get it done. He got it done last year. He's obviously 1-2 in the game. But Jalen Hurts, no stranger to big games as well. He's played in national championships. He's played in Auburn, Alabama. He's played in SEC championships. So I believe he knows how to get it done in big games as well. And I could definitely see him having a great game, especially with Texas's question marks at defensive backs, corners, safeties, whatever it may be. I could definitely see Jalen Hurts tearing up the Texas defense. But I think Texas, if they want to win this game, they're going to have to play really, really good in the secondary. If they can force Oklahoma to run, that's to their advantage. Their run defense is pretty decent. I think it was 2 years ago, they had an amazing run defense. And I think if they can keep that up, if they can keep up just holding the line, especially with Oklahoma, with their question marks on the offensive line, with some injuries, Texas's defensive line is going to have to attack Jalen Hurts. They're going to have to get some sacks. They're going to have to force turnovers. They're going to have to put some pressure on him. Don't let him run, as I said earlier. Force Oklahoma to run the football. That's how you win the game, because your offense can score. And obviously, last week against West Virginia, I had a lot of question marks about Texas's defense, and I've been kind of bashing them a little bit this video. But they did have 4 interceptions last week against West Virginia. That being said, it was Austin Kendall. That's not Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is Austin Kendall's like here, so that's a big difference. But That's another point. And my last point. Oklahoma versus running quarterbacks. Against Houston, they allowed 31 points. On 15 attempts, the Houston quarterback, De'Aaron King, I think, he had 103 rushing yards on 15 attempts. So that is a lot of yards for a quarterback to run. Let me check the stats for the UCLA game. But if Sam Ehlinger can have another good rushing game, I think the Longhorns can win this. If Jalen Hurts has a good rushing game, I seriously think that's going to be another one. But I don't think the UCLA quarterback did as hot. Yeah, they just had a bad game against Oklahoma. They kind of sucked. Yeah, 14 attempts for -6 yards. So Oklahoma did better against UCLA. I'll give that to them. But my final prediction, I thoroughly believe that Texas can get it done again. I would not be surprised if Oklahoma won. Oklahoma is one of the best teams in the country. They're a playoff contender again. But Texas has been tested already this year. They have been punched in the mouth by LSU. They've played a big, tough team, top 5 team. And I think that's to their advantage. They've played an air raid offense. They played Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow tore him up. I think they can fix some of those small mistakes they made in that game. I think they can capitalize on some big opportunities if they're able to get them. I think Texas wins this game in another high-scoring game. But I think they win it by more than 3. I think they win it by a touchdown. Going to go with 45-38 Texas. I think Jalen Hurts has a spectacular game, but it's not enough. I think Texas' defense forces at least 1 turnover, and that is the key to the game because Texas will have 0 turnovers. But it'll be a fun game regardless. It's always a fun game. It's been a one-possession game since 2014, I believe. 2014 was a 5-point game in favor of the Sooners. 2015 was a 7-point game in favor of the Longhorns. 2016, 5 points Sooners. 2017, 5 points Sooners. 2018, 7 points Longhorns. And then in the Big 12 Championship, that was a 12-point game. But in the Cotton Bowl, that's what we're looking at right now. It's been a much different story. It's been close, even when Texas is a big underdog like they were in 2015. So I think it'll be a really good game regardless. I think it'll be a high-powered offensive game once again. But I got nothing else to say. Oh, I do have something else to say. I'm looking at my notes here. Paul Finnebon. Oh, man, what a dummy. I'll try to be nice during this, but basically, Texas and OU fans don't like each other, but they can agree on this. Paul Finnebon said if Texas wins this weekend, Oklahoma and the Big 12 are out of the playoffs. And then he said last year was debatable. Last year was debatable, Paul. Are you sure about that? Are you trying to defend Georgia, say Georgia was supposed to make it in? Because they got slapped in their bowl game by Texas. And Texas lost to Oklahoma in their conference championship by double digits. So what are you trying to say, Paul? Come on, even if Texas wins out, if they win the conference, they win out from here, 1 loss, with their only loss being to LSU, assuming that LSU doesn't have 1 loss and they're not in, I think Texas can make it. Texas makes it. If Oklahoma loses this and wins out after that, Oklahoma makes it, all right? If it comes to a tiebreaker with a 2-loss team, you got a 1-loss conference champion versus a 2-loss non-conference champion. I'm taking the 1-loss conference championship 999 times out of 1,000. Like, Paul, get it together, man. Come on. Anyways, I think Texas wins this one. As I said, my preseason prediction, I think Texas wins this one but loses the Big 12 championship again. So don't come at me too hard, OU fans. I did give you another Big 12 championship for this year. But Texas, I got them winning. It'll be a fun game to watch. This has been a long video, but it was a fun one. I like talking about this stuff. It's always fun every once in a while to talk about football. But, yeah, tomorrow, Talladega preview. As I said, it's going to be much shorter than this because I don't really have to say much about Talladega, but I will be there, so that'll be fun. Saturday, if Texas wins, I'll do a reaction video. If not, I don't know what I'll do because I'm not going to do a reaction to losing. That's lame. And then Sunday, you'll get a bunch of Talladega videos. It'll be a fun one. Hook 'em horns, my friends. That's all I got.